Hello and welcome back for another video from Old Frames Gaming. I am your host BK. This video is going to be from round 3 of our August meetup at Dragon's Den, where we got together to play some Atlantic old school Magic. This video is going to feature Chris W on his Mono Red Rukh Control deck versus Colin on Mono Black Rukh. Let's take a look at the deck lists. And here we have Chris's Mono Red Rukh Control deck, which as the name suggests has Rook Egg as its centerpiece. Chris is utilizing his burn package in multiple ways here to dispense with Rook Egg in order to get that early 4/4 flying bird onto the battlefield, as well as to help control the board and finish off his opponents. He's powering out threats like Shivan Dragon early with his fast mana, including Mana Vault, Mox Ruby, Soul Ring, and Black Lotus. This is also going to help him stifle his opponent's mana production with getting down an early Blood Moon and firing off those Stone Rains. Chris is prepared for those artifacts that can be troublesome by slotting 3 main deck Shatters, and he's also prepared for anything on the ground with Up Control, which can block all day long and regenerate. Let's take a look at his sideboard and see how he's suited for games 2 and 3 in this matchup. And in Chris's sideboard, we find numerous tools to help us. He's brought a Fisher to assist that main deck burn package with additional creature and or land destruction. Shatterstorm as well as the 4th Shatter can come in against Shop's decks or any decks that have troublesome artifacts. Fork is going to help us with copying burn spells as well as potentially making multiple copies of Stone Rains to knock an opponent's mana base back into the Stone Age, no pun intended. We find Triskelion here is yet another ugly beater that also has the potential for direct damage and can be powered out by all that fast mana that we find in the main deck. The real obvious choice here is Red Elemental Blast to help fight off those blue mages, and he's prepared for the Arabian aggro matchups with a couple copies of City in a Bottle. Since Mono White is usually a good budget-friendly deck in this format, Chris has opted to play a Singleton Flashfires. Lastly, he's brought along Earthquake and Disintegrate again to supplement those main deck burn spells and to work in tandem with Navineral's Discs to assist with creature removal for those aggro matchups. Let's have a peek at what Colin was on for this meetup. Colin was on Mono Black Rukh for this month's tournament, and this deck rarely disappoints. Mono Black Rukh is a fantastic budget option that's also a ton of fun to play. The mana base is consistent, only playing Swamp, 3 copies of Mishra's Factory for early beats, and the ubiquitous Strip Mine. The objective of this deck is pretty simple. Rip apart your opponent's hand with Hymn to Torak, Mind Twist, and Hypnotic Spectre, all of which are easily powered out early by Dark Rituals and Mox Jet, and then finish them off with damage from the rack and some efficient, low-cost creatures. Colin has a Singleton Terror and a couple of Paralyze, as well as 2 copies of Royal Assassin to help him lock down early creatures from his opponents and clear the way for his Hypnotic Specters, Black Knights, and Assembly Workers. Black Knight, perhaps most importantly, has protection from white, so Swords to Plowshares isn't taking him out. The first strike ability is also notable as it can stop a lot of early small creatures in those aggro matchups. Finally, Colin brought a pair of Drain Life to recoup early life loss, finish off an opponent, or in a pinch take out an opposing blocker. And though it's hard to see just off screen, he is playing a copy of Demonic Tutor to go find his favorite card. Let's look at Colin's sideboard and see how he's handling his game 2s and 3s. Colin's sideboard looks like the opposite of fun for every opponent. He's prepared for any matchup with white cards with a couple copies of Gloom. Animate Dead can easily steal a creature that he's dispatched with any of the myriad of creature destruction spells he's got, especially since he's brought along 2 more terrors to supplement the single copy in the main deck. Another Paralyze can't hurt either, as paying 4 mana just to untap each upkeep can be problematic for a lot of decks. Greed is going to help him keep his hand full of cards to maintain the pressure, and a couple of Pestilence are great here for opposing aggro matchups, as well as to provide some direct damage. And in that vein, he's packing a 3rd Drain Life. Not to be out-creatured, a 3rd Royal Assassin is found here as well. And lastly, he's brought a Singleton copy of Fear so he can punch through any opposing non-black, non-artifact creatures, and 2 Meek Stones when opposing creatures are just too large to deal with. Overall, he's got some really great tools here. Let's jump into the gameplay and see who comes out on top. Alright, and we're joining these players in game 1 of round 3. Chris is going to be on the left-hand side of your screen, and Colin is going to be on your right. Colin is going to open up on 6 cards as he is taking a mulligan. So he is deciding the best 6 of his opening 7. Looks like he has done so. And so Chris is going to open up on a mountain and pass the turn. So Colin draws a new one off the top. Looks like he's picked up a Hymn to Torak. And he's found a swamp. So he's going to start us off on the rack. On Chris's turn, he's found a mountain. And it looks like he's going to go ahead and dispatch the rack with that shatter. And pass the turn to Colin. So Colin's found a second copy of Swamp. And he's going to go ahead and Dark Ritual. So now we have 3 black mana in the mana pool. We're going to play an Ebon Hand, order the Ebon Hand, and use that extra mana along with the supplemental Swamp to go ahead and fire off a Hymn to Torak and get 2 cards out of Chris's hand. Looks like we found a Shatter and a Mistress Factory. So he's going to pass the turn back over to Chris here shortly. Chris finds another mountain. He's going to go ahead and Stone Rain one of those swamps. And pass the turn to Colin. Colin's going to draw a new card. He finds a Mistress Factory, which we're going to go ahead and throw down. Trying to get those early beaters online as quick as possible. We're going to go ahead and send Order into the red zone for 2 damage coming across, sending Chris down to 18 life. Passing the turn. Chris has found a 4th mountain here. We're going to go ahead and Stone Rain the other swamp. Colin untaps and draws a fresh card. Looks like he's found a Hypnotic Spectre, but no way to cast that thing yet. He's thinking it over. Looks like we're going to come across for 2. Order the Ebon Hand meets a Fiery Fate with Lightning Bolt and goes to the yard. Chris is going to untap here. Take a look at a new one off the top. Looks like he's found Blood Moon. So now Colin has a mountain on his side of the field. Colin draws a swamp for the turn, which is good news for him. Potentially very bad news for Chris. He plays it and passes the turn. Chris hasn't found anything useful this turn, so he passes right back to Colin, who finds another swamp. And that looks like Hypnotic Spectre mana. So the old hippie is going to come on down to the battlefield, and Colin's going to pass the turn. Chris has managed to find a Mana Vault. All that mana and nothing to cast yet, unfortunately for him. Colin draws another swamp. And he finds a second Hypnotic Spectre. And he's going to come across for 2, sending Chris to 16. And he's going to get that last card out of his hand, which appears to be a duplicate copy of Blood Moon, and that's okay. Chris finds a Strip Mine and goes ahead and plays it. He's going to take out a swamp. Colin's going to untap. He's found a Dark Ritual. And there's Disrupting Scepter. So now we have repeatable discard every turn. And 4 coming across into the red zone. Chris doesn't have any cards in hand yet. So that ability is going to be kind of moot. But 4 damage sends him to 12. And Chris manages to find a Hammerheim. And just passes the turn back over to Colin. Colin's picked up a copy of the rack, which he's going to go ahead and deploy here. And then he's going to come across for 4, sending Chris to 8. And it looks like Colin is well on his way to closing this one out. Unless something turns around real quick. Chris finds a copy of Mountain, plays it, and passes the turn back. It looks like we may have missed our trigger on the rack. So Chris would actually be, I believe, at 5 here. or maybe even 4. Colin finds a copy of Black Knight and comes across for 4 with Hypnotic Specters, which is going to send Chris to 4 based on the die, but I actually think he would have been lower here. Chris is going to take a look at a fresh one off the top. He finds a mountain, and he sees the writing on the wall, everybody. So we're going to give these two a chance to sideboard and shuffle up for game 2. Colin's going to go into game 2, up a game on Chris from game 1. Let's see how it turns out. Alright, so starting off in game 2, Chris is going to be on the play, and he's going to open up on a mountain. He is on a mulligan to 6 cards, and then he passes the turn back over to Colin. Colin looking it over here and seeing how he wants to lead off. Looks like he's got lots of good options here. He's got a handful of lands and spells, and that's all it takes. So he's going to start us off on a Dark Ritual. Into a Black Knight and a copy of the Rack. And then he's going to pass the turn back over to Chris. We got a reader. I think you're okay for right now, Chris. He finds a second mountain. Trying to decide if we want to deploy that Mistress Factory just yet or not. We indeed do decide to do that. And we're going to fill the mana pool with 3 mana for nothing troll. So that guy is a 2/2 regenerating creature. Pretty cool. Obviously not going to be able to block Black Knight here with no way to regenerate. Colin finds a Mistress Factory of his own. He's going to come across for 2, which Chris is going to go ahead and take and go to 18. He untaps. Looks like we found a Blood Moon. And a second mountain. So Chris was going to add 4 for a Rook Egg. The centerpiece of the deck. Let's see if he can make that thing work. He passes the turn to Colin. Colin looks like he has picked up a copy of Mind Twist, which could probably be fairly devastating here. Colin's studying what to do. He's just going to pass the turn. We found a second copy of Mistress Factory. And a Lightning Bolt to go ahead and take care of that Black Knight. So Black Knight's going to go to the bin. Now we're in the Rack territory because he's going to be under 3 cards. So we're going to go ahead and come across with that Troll and an Assembly Worker, that Factory. Or maybe not. Nope, just the Troll this time. Colin's going to go ahead and activate his own Factory and pump itself to make it a 3/3. Chris is going to go ahead and regenerate that Troll in response. So we found another Swamp. We're going to go ahead and play a second copy of Black Knight. See if this one sticks around. Looks like we may have missed our trigger on the Rack. I think he should have taken 1 damage there. But Chris does manage to find a third copy of Mistress Factory. Chris studying this board position pretty closely, trying to figure out his next maneuver. Alright, we're going to fire up a couple of the assembly workers and come on into the red zone with those two as well as the troll. Colin's going to opt to block the troll. Chris is going to regenerate, of course. So Colin's going to take 4 damage. So he goes on down to 14. I think there's some discussion about the regenerating troll here. And we may have gotten our math wrong. We did. So they're backing it up. Colin's actually going to be at 16. And Chris is going to pass the turn. So Colin's going to go ahead and untap and take a look at a new one off the top. He finds another swamp. Going to go ahead and deploy that swamp. Chris with 2 cards in hand here. So Colin's going to go ahead and get both of those with that hymn. Looks like we found another Mistress Factory and a Blood Moon. These two looking like they're having a pretty good time. So the rack is basically going to be a bolt to the face every turn now with an empty hand. So Chris is going to go to 15. And he finds a mountain. But now the question is do we go ahead and play it or do we just keep it in our hand to reduce the damage? Chris is going to opt to play it instead. Figuring that the 6 damage potential off of the assembly workers is probably better and going to outpace the rack damage. So here comes 2, 4, 6 damage into the red zone, potentially 7 if he decides to go ahead and pump one of those assembly workers with his factory that he has kept back. We're going to go ahead and block that troll one more time. Activate a factory. Pump and block. Those two are going to trade. And troll gets regenerated. Yep, both of those go to the yard, gentlemen. Alright, so Colin ends up taking 2 on the turn, so he should be at 14. I think we missed it, but Colin is in fact at 14 life here. He finds a Royal Assassin off the top. We're going to go ahead and get that little guy down. And Colin here is studying the board position, and he's going to come on into the red zone with that Black Knight, which Chris is going to promptly block with Rook Egg. So Colin's going to pass the turn back, and Chris is going to untap. It looks like, again, we missed the trigger on the rack. Chris should be at 12. Ah, there we go. We did catch up with it. So good job, gentlemen. Chris studying this board state. That Royal Assassin makes things a little bit tricky here. So Chris is going to fire up both of those factories. And the troll. We're going to come across for 6. So Colin records his life total down to 10, but I actually think he's supposed to be at 8. So Colin's going to go ahead and take his turn here and untap. He finds a swamp. He's going to go ahead and fire down an Order of the Ebon Hand. Well, that's going to give him a Pump Knight, so he can put some of those extra swamps to work. in the subsequent turns. Colin adding 2 more mana here. He's going to go ahead and him to get that last card out of Chris's hand. So he finds a Stone Rain there. So Royal Assassin not much good against this up control here because he can just regenerate it. So Colin passes the turn. Chris untaps, takes his rack damage. He goes to 9. And he's found another Rook Egg. Chris taking his time here just to make sure he doesn't make a misplay or overextend. So we're going to fire up those 2 factories and that troll and come on into the red zone one more time. Alright, so Royal Assassin is going to see some action, and he's going to go ahead and take out one of those assembly workers. Troll is going to meet Black Knight in battle. Chris is going to get 2 damage in, sending Colin to 8 here. And he's going to pass the turn back. So Colin finds yet another swamp, which is not necessarily bad because that Order of the Ebon Hand is one of those classic pump knights, so it can get bigger and or gain first strike. Some discussion here about how Rook Egg works. Probably not a card that Colin is familiar with. Doesn't see a whole lot of old school play from what I understand, but it's a fun card nonetheless. So Colin opts not to attack, and he passes the turn. Chris is going to absorb a little bit more rack damage. A little bit less this time. Chris has found a mountain. And so he passes the turn back over to Colin. Colin finds an assembly worker mistress factory of his own. He's been holding on to that Mind Twist for a while, everybody. Is this going to be the turn? Doesn't look like it yet. So Chris draws a fresh one off the top. Looks like he's found a strip mine. He's going to go ahead and account for his rack damage, which was only 1 this time. Strip mine is going to send Mistress Factory to the bin. Chris passes the turn back over to Colin. Colin finds a strip mine of his own. So we can go ahead and get rid of that Mistress Factory on Chris's side of the board. So Colin doing some math here. He's going to go ahead and Mind Twist those last couple of cards out of Chris's hand. Is anybody going into the red zone? Looks like it. So he's going to attack in for potentially 4 as of right now. Up to 5 if that Order of the Ebon Hand goes unblocked and he chooses to pump it up. So Upton Troll is going to meet Order of the Ebon Hand in battle. Colin's going to give it first strike, and Chris is going to regenerate it. It looks like Black Knight, he's going to take it. Or isn't he? These two likely talking about how Royal Assassin's ability comes into play here, potentially for any of those creatures. So Chris is going to go ahead and he's going to opt to block, which I would have done myself as well. Now rack damage is going to factor in here. Chris is going to go down to 3. He's drawn a Blood Moon, which is completely ineffective on this board state. But we're going to go ahead and deploy it just to keep additional factories under the gun should they find their way onto the battlefield. And Chris is throwing in the towel, everybody. All right. Thanks for the great game, gentlemen. We do appreciate it. Awesome gameplay from you guys. If you like this kind of content, we would ask that you would like and subscribe. It's free. If you like additional old school content, we would encourage you to go on over to The Orb. Our buddy Joe runs that channel, and he features all types of old school action over there. Thanks for popping by. Thank you for all you returning viewers, and thanks to all new viewers. We do appreciate it. See you next time.